is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
We are in late October, hard to believe, but it is true, and hard to believe it, but the Ali Foreman fight still has not taken place. My goodness, can you imagine being over there for this long? Anyway, I'm Scott Johnston, one of the three hosts of the Past Star Prime podcast. Also got Billy Mahoney and Mark Hoffman on hand, as always. And guys, you go to Africa to cover this fight, and because of a cut over Foreman's eye, in a sparring session that required 11 stitches, the fight gets delayed by 6 weeks, and you're there the entire time. Can you imagine? You go there for what you think is probably to get acclimated and stuff, I'm thinking 10 to 14 days as a journalist. And next thing you know, your company's going, well, we don't want to fly you back, so you're there for 6 weeks. That's crazy.
They'd be doing layoffs when they came back now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, come back, half the staff would be
gone. Or don't come back at all.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you guys a question regarding this. And once again, this is one of those Bill versus Mark things where I think I know my answer.
That's my answer, no.
Okay, so Mark never had stitches.
Okay, we'll have to rephrase the question.
Have you guys ever had stitches?
Yes.
Everywhere. Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, you tell me yours. I've only had them once.
My humor just leaves people in stitches, but
no.
Very good.
But anyway, boom. I've had stitches several times. Well, I had, in 2000 I was diagnosed with melanoma, so I had surgery, and basically they shoot a dye in you to make sure it hasn't moved to any other lymph nodes. Unfortunately, it hadn't, so I didn't need chemo. But what they did is they had to do this big incision on my arm, remove a lot of skin, and close it up. So I still have the scar here. I've got 32 stitches. Woo. You can still see it right there on that arm. Wow. And then a few years later, they had to do something on the underarm down there, more as a precautionary thing. But that's my big stitches story. Yeah,
wow.
32. And the worst part was like 2 weeks later, them starting to take them out, because then they're just cutting them, but you just feel your skin tugging, and it's
All right, Billy, all over. So give me just one.
Gosh, which fun one?
The left cross I gave you?
No, I'll do the simplest one. Other ones are graphic. I tore my knee off, everything off the top of my knee when I was a kid. So they had to reset all the skin around it, and so they stitched all the way around it. But in those days, you had to, I had the white, everything jiggly was hanging out of my leg, so I had to wrap it. That's what happens when you're on a motorcycle and you hit a wall.
Wow.
So you had to wrap it, then they go in and they had to pull it, and underneath stitches and over stitches, yeah.
Did it hurt like a mother, or was it so much like you were in shock your body?
I was 13, maybe 14. I'm sure it hurt at the time. Yeah.
Luckily, the mind does weird things.
It does.
On that.
It does.
You don't remember it.
No, I remember. I vaguely.
The pain.
I was awake. The one that the most painful thing I had, other than leg being broken in half, was when they took fluid out of the top of my knee.
Ooh.
That was the most. They had to pin me down. That was. And I heard people talk about that, say, "Oh, it's not that bad." And I remember the doctor going, "This won't hurt." And I thought, "Oh my God, yeah." Oh. And they had to go up underneath, and so I wouldn't do that.
That reminded me.
Yeah.
One time they had to do this needle thing to test something in my arm. They put the needle in there. This bugs me to hell. It wasn't the pain of the needle. They hit a nerve, and all of a sudden my arm just went like this. Involuntary. Really? Freaked the hell out of me.
Oh my God, you're like a zombie.
I am.
I had stitches one time, and one time only. I was loading stuff into my old Saab, and the trunk of the roof on the trunk wouldn't stay open. It would kind of come back down. And so I'm lifting things and moving, and I had forgotten about that. So it had come back down, me not knowing, and I stood up, and I hit my head on the corner of it.
Ooh.
And I'm like, oh, man, that hurt. So I put my hand on my head, and I'm like, man. And then I started to, like, really sweat, Sweat's just pouring down my face, except for the sweat is blood.
Oh, my God.
And so I take my hand off, and it's just covered in blood. So
How many
luckily
stitches?
I was truly moving, right? So the
Yeah.
boxes that I had just put into the car were towels and such.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, I have a towel right here. So I just put a towel on, drove myself to the ER. I think 15 or something
Still,
like that.
wow.
Yeah. Right in the
Wow.
top of the head.
Now here's one thing. Here's how times have changed. Back in '85, I'm working at Albertsons and I'm a clerk, and you open boxes and you're putting stuff on shelves. So it's like a olive jar. I put my hand down there. I didn't realize some of them had broke.
Oh.
So I just saw my finger right there. So I go up to the manager. The manager, I said, "Oh, Don," I said, I really cut myself. I had blood everywhere. He goes, "Wrap it up, Mahoney. Get right back out there." So they just wrapped it. I worked the rest of my shift. The next day, I went and got 4 stitches in my fingers. That's how the world's different now. He looked right at it, took the bandage off, and goes, just wrap it up, get back out there. I just
Don't worry, it's a food industry.
It's a different world nowadays.
Now they would be out for 3 months.
I know. I'd be on disability. I'd be, a millionaire.
All right, so Foreman's eye is healing up. They're getting ready to fight, and coming up a bit on the cover story, we're going to talk with a former intern of Mark and Bill's back when they were at KCBS. This intern has a real connection to George Foreman, right, guys?
He sure does.
Who is she, Mark?
Georgetta, George's daughter.
Georgetta Foreman will be joining us to talk about that time in her father's
One
life.
of the nicest people I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
Yeah, she still is, too.
Yeah.
Bill is like the least liked person
Yeah,
I've
very
ever
much.
worked with.
Very
but
much. I'm
she was
too
a nice.
busy cutting myself on olive jars.
Yeah.
But let's start with the issue, shall we? And Mark, this one's for you. Don't recall this before, but the issue starts with Frank DeFord reviewing a movie, or at least writing about one, called The Gambler.
Right.
Starring Jimmy Caan, who portrays the gambling addict Axel, who says, "I like the uncertainty, the threat of losing. The movie is as joyless as this line suggests." Mark, you remember this flick?
I sure do, and it's so funny. I would think Sports Illustrated wanted to start this thing called Movie Talk and have different authors do it, but I don't think it really lasted. It was a sporadic thing, if at all. But I think
Well,
it's
they
just
did
fascinating.
every once in a while. They'd have a book to start the,
Right.
So they
But
every
yeah,
once
but
in a
Big
while.
change up.
But I remember this movie because he's a professor who's got a bad gambling habit, and they did a remake with Mark Wahlberg about, 10 plus years ago or whatever, and Wahlberg dropped a ton of weight to do this. He was like 140 pounds. They lost all his muscle and stuff. But anyway, this movie was really fascinating.
I don't think he
'cause-
lost 140 pounds.
No, he got down to probably 140
Oh,
pounds.
okay. Oh, I was like,
He was
my
8.
God.
He was,
But,
he was 30 pounds.
But James Caan, is a college professor or something. He's addicted to gambling. There's a scene, I think, where he's betting a game and it loses, and he's listening to it on a transistor radio while in the bath, and he kicks it off. Unfortunately, it didn't land in the bath, but outside the bath. But it is kind of a joyless movie because he loses the girl and stuff because he's addicted. But I just remember the end of the movie where there's a pimp or something involved in a pimp, and the pimp has a knife, and James Caan is actually encouraging him to cut him with it, and he
So he
actually
could get
cuts his-
stitches.
Right. He cuts his face. He
Right.
cuts
It's
his
a
face,
Seinfeld episode.
face with the
Right
knife,
back around.
and the pimp's kind of like freaked out, like, "What the hell is your problem?" But the actor who played the pimp, Antonio Fargas, later of Starsky and Hutch fame, who played Honey Bear, and
Bear,
whose
that's
son
right.
Justin Fargas
That's right.
played at Notre Dame and in the NFL for the Raiders and stuff like that.
Norco.
So that's what I remember.
So you never saw Mandingo.
Didn't see
but you saw
Mandingo,
this
but I
one,
do saw
right?
The Gambler.
Okay.
And
All
I
right.
did see James Caan at Gold's Gym while I was
Really?
a lot. Yeah.
I always liked him.
You got an ad for us? By the way,
Oh yeah.
he played at Notre Dame High School, right?
Yeah, he played Notre Dame and Sherman Oaks.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking the wrong
And
guy.
then
And then he played at SC.
you're right.
Right.
That's what I meant, Notre Dame High School, not
Right.
college.
That's what I thought. I was
Right.
like,
But when I
don't
said
remember.
Notre Dame, you're right. I could see
Get
how
out.
you could.
Scorecard, Mark. You got a couple. Give me one.
Oh my God, there's so many good ones. Well, again, in the theme for the Ali Foreman fight, so Muhammad Ali's wife, Belinda, is wearing a George Foreman button on her purse. and has sent Foreman an autographed picture of herself addressed to Sweet Brother. She's very high on our list of idols, which include Jim Brown, Roberta Flack, Sammy Davis Jr., Gladys Knight, etc. You can't put a husband on a list like that, Belinda said. It's only for idols. So they asked her, does Lee approve of you carrying around a Foreman butter? No, but he can have his idols, Sugar Ray Robinson, whatever. Mm-hmm. I can have mine. I don't like George only as a fighter. As a person, he's tops. I met him for 5 minutes in a hotel in New York. We were talking about him, and I said, I'll be rooting for you at the fight. I don't like fighting, period. I don't want Ali to be hurt. I don't want George to be hurt. I won't cheer for one or the other. And so I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah.
No doubt. Billy, you got something on Foreman Ali?
Yeah, I do, exactly. I also wanted something good. If this is the beginning of the magazine, it's about a movie called The Gambler.
Never heard of it. Tell me about it.
Should we tell him now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark, we had already doled out who was going to do the Ali one. It was me.
Oh.
And you're going to do the other one. There's Scott and Eric going, okay. So The Gambler was a good movie.
Who was in that?
James Scott.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you see I have equal opportunity? I didn't listen to Scott. I don't listen to you.
I know. Okay.
Jeremy is the only person I listen to.
I say we just all do the Muhammad Ali story in our own way.
Well, I heard the wife's rooting for Foreman.
Yeah, she seems to like him, man, because she's, likes Roberta Flack.
Well,
and
they met at a
everything.
hotel.
Yeah, she's got a button with him. There you go. Well, there is a the New York Jets. They you have to find temporary housing when they're in training camp or they're in camps. They've got to find temporary housings for their athletes. So what they do is they ask viewers and listeners to supply leads. One young boy, probably just a great kid, he wrote to say 2 or 3 Jets players could stay at his house. How nice is that? It doesn't matter who they send, he wrote, but his mom prefers Joe Namath, his dad, Rich Castor, and him and his dog would like the flea, Eddie Bell. That's really nice. Says his mom is a good cook, while his dad is quite a handyman, while he's a good football player and can help the guys practice in the yard.
Nice.
I don't know if
Good
the Jets
kid.
took him up on that, but, you
Could you
might want to
imagine-
send one guy.
You imagine Namath there and Dad comes home.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
hey, where's your mom?
She's taking a nap.
She's upstairs with the quarterback calling some plays.
It's like the old joke, where the lady, the postman's delivering around Christmas time, and the lady is wearing a lingerie and says, "Come on in," and he's like, "What the heck?" and takes her up to the bedroom and has sex with him, and at the end gives him $1, and he goes, "What's this for?" And he goes, "I asked my husband what I should get for you for Christmas." He said, "Screw the mailman, give him $1." It's actually the F word, but for this podcast, I'm doing it.
Don't you dare say that.
So anyway, that's a
good.
joke I tell all the
fun.
time.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually.
But there was another thing. What was the story you were doing? Because I'm senile and I can't remember it.
I was into something about the gambler.
Another one here. Lou Brock's the single-season steal leader after swiping 118 and 74. Next up, the all-time leader in steals with 892. Ty Cobb, and then Billy Hamilton with 937. But he's got a weird little story behind that, doesn't he, Mark?
Well, he played, first of all, in the 1800s for
Right.
the most part.
Yeah.
1888 to 1901.
No, he didn't. He
No,
played with
but
the Reds a
here's the
few
thing.
years ago. I saw him at a bartending
But
event.
here's the
Was
funny
he
thing.
100?
Okay? So he's William R. Hamilton, but he's known as Billy Hamilton.
Right.
We all remember Billy Hamilton from the Cincinnati Reds
Played
and
with the
Texas
White
Rangers,
Sox.
who was a stolen base champ.
Yes.
So maybe he was reincarnated.
That's
as
right.
Billy Hamilton again.
So Billy Hamilton had 937 career steals, but back then you would get a steal if you went from first to third on a hit.
Yeah.
Or if you were on second and there was a fly ball to the center field and you took third, that was considered a stolen base. So his stolen bases, I don't know how many he got from those, but they're a little, I never knew that about the stolen base.
How many would Ricky Henderson have had that year?
He'd
Then
have
250?
2,000.
Yeah, right?
That's just crazy.
Mark, they said it.
They said what?
Exactly.
Clint Murchison, who is Dallas Cowboys owner. Remember, there were owners of the Cowboys before Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to believe.
Did Jones buy them from him?
wasn't a Bum Bright, Texas like Bum Bright.
I think you're right, Mark. I think you're right.
They
yeah.
bought it from him, so there was in between owners. But anyway,
more
Clint
bums in the
asked if he
NFL.
would try to sign World Football League players. If the World Football League succeeds, I'm not going after their players. I want to sign the accountants.
Right? Yeah. It's not going to happen. Triple crown for the Clowns. The A's, 3 straight titles. They finally get it done. It's 2 organizations have won 3 World Series in a row. The Yankees won 5 straight from 1949 to 53, 4 straight from 1936 to 39. They also won 3 straight at the turn of this century. But the only other team to do that, the 72, 3-4 Oakland A's.
Right.
And they did it by dominating a great Dodgers team, holding them to a 228 average in the 5 games after LA had 272 in the regular season.
And there are people in the pictures from there when they win it. There are all these kids running on the field celebrating. They all look like Jeff Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, they're just.
Well,
Can you
this
imagine
is-
today
this is
getting
the
on the field like
Yeah,
that?
they
This
put
is the
cops and everything on
mid-70s.
horses now.
Yeah.
They put, in New York, they had the police on horseback.
Right.
Well, that's because now, as soon as it's over, they set up the
Right.
Okay.
the post game and
that's
all
it.
that kind of
Okay.
stuff. Game 5 of the series, game's tied 2-2 in the 7th. Fans in left field start throwing things on the field towards Billy Buckner, delaying the start of the inning. Mike Marshall could have stayed warm as he was just coming into the game and thrown a few more pitches while they cleared up the trash in the field, but he decided against that. Joe Rudy noticed that he hadn't thrown any pitches while the delay was going on and thought, I wonder if he'll try to sneak a fastball by me. He guessed right. He did try to sneak a fastball by him. Rudy hits it out, giving the A's a 3-2 lead. Dodgers' last best chance in the 8th. Buckner leads off with a single to center. Ball gets past Billy North. Reggie Jackson's backing him up. He throws to Dick Green, the cutoff man. He throws to Bando at third. Buckner's out. So instead of a leadoff man at second, and I think Garvey, Wynn, and Say coming up or something like that, it's 1 out, and the Dodgers were done. A's in 5 for their 3rd championship in a row.
Didn't Buckner, just because you mentioned him, didn't he get a lot of abuse in that series? Because he said the A's reminded him of the Pirates from the National League when the Dodgers were against them. So he didn't. He gave him no credit.
Right.
Basically talked bad.
They
about
also
the
they
A's.
had won the last 2 World Series.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers were favored in this series,
Yeah.
and they asked Buckner about that, and he said, we should be favored. We're the better team.
Yeah. So he took a lot of abuse in that.
And, that's just one of those things that, back then they used to say those kind of things, and they would call it bulletin board
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
Coaches and managers now just really want their players, unless you're Deion Sanders, not to say that kind of stuff.
They all just say they're just a really good team.
Right.
It's so interesting. That was probably very traumatic for Buckner, but 12 years later, that's going to be really.
That's what I was thinking, Mark.
The
He had
traumatic
gotten
moment for him.
I also thought about that World Series. The A's won 3 of their games 3-2.
Yeah.
The Dodgers won 1 game 3-2. There's only one other game. It was 5-2 A's.
Yeah.
All were
3-2,
3-2.
3-2.
Yeah.
But what I found fascinating is the A's have won 3 straight World Series, yet rumors still persist that he's trying to leave the Bay Area and move him to New Orleans or Toronto or Seattle or D.C. And remember, it looked like, no, that was the Giants. Was it the Giants that were going to go to Tampa Bay?
Giants.
And they even had a press conference.
Yep.
And then it never happened.
That's right. I remember that.
But yeah, the A's, there was all this talk. And
Well, because he never, as Jason Turbo said, Finley never became a Bay Area guy.
No.
He kept saying he was.
He visited.
He had nothing to do with Oakland, really, other than he had a team there. So,
But Raleigh Fingers had a great series. So did Catfish Hunter, winning games and saving them as well. Just,
Fingers was the MVP of the
Right.
series.
That's right. And then they said, what did he saved? Fingers saved the clinching game 5 for Odom, but 6 days earlier they'd gotten into a fight, a fist fight, because it was. They said, "Here's a conversation." Fingers said, "You can't even spell divorce," and then Odom said, "Yeah, but your wife can." Boom! Time for the fisticuffs. I'm just saying that team was
At each other's
amazing
throats.
that they could knock each other out, and then whatever time game time started, they were all on the same page. That usually doesn't happen
Blue
with
Moon's
most teams.
giving the ball to Raleigh.
Yeah,
Save
exactly.
him. Save
Exactly.
my game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about your wife later.
Ancient Age and his pal Whiskey. At age 40 and his 18th season, Sonny Jurgensen is getting it done in D.C. There was a time when he was the best passer in the league. Now he was a backup until 2 weeks ago when head coach George Allen called him in off the bench to rescue a game against the Bengals. He won that game. The next week's game, he orchestrates a late drive to beat the Super Bowl champion Dolphins. Once again, it's his starting job. So 18 years in, and, this is back when quarterbacks took a beating.
Yes, they did.
I mean, you were talking about Caleb Williams getting his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
They don't really allow that in the NFL now compared to, there's that one famous shot of Bradshaw where the guy like picks him up and like suplexes him and Bradshaw lands like directly on his head.
I saw that with Jack Youngblood did that to Tommy Kramer of the Vikings, and Kramer was on the field twitching, and I'm thinking, I thought he was dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, back in those days.
The fact that, and they're playing with like the one, the face mask that has like one bar, I mean, they're taking fingers to the face and stuff. So he was just an old, tough son of a gun.
Well, what was interesting about him, first of all, he was only 5'11", so he was not a big quarterback. And he began his career with the Eagles. That's where he was like a prolific passer.
Yeah.
And he won a Super Bowl in '60. Not a Super Bowl, an NFL championship. Being the Packers, the first time they were in there. But I, as a Cowboys fan, hated Jurgensen because my memories were always Redskins-Cowboys and that rivalry in the 70s. And it was Jurgensen and it was Billy Kilmer, quarterbacking, the Redskins. And Kilmer was younger, not that much, but a few years younger than Jurgensen. But he had been in a car accident, and he always walked with a limp and stuff like that. And he looked older than Jurgensen.
Well,
the way he walked.
The headline of this story when he says and his pal Whiskey, it's not that Sonny Jurgensen drank whiskey. It's that Billy Kilmer was the starting quarterback, and Jurgensen said he had a whiskey face.
Right.
And they were good friends. They were very good friends.
But they all both looked old. And people forget Billy Kilmer, when he was in college, he played at UCLA, by the way.
I did?
Was a running quarterback.
Right.
He was fast. He ran a lot. And then he got into a car accident and he couldn't run after that. So in the NFL,
and George Allen wanted him to be the quarterback because he was more of a. They would control the ball more. Right. When Sonny came in to play quarterback, they threw the ball, and George Allen didn't want to throw the ball, but that was what they had to do to win, and so they did.
But it was Billy Kilmer and not Sonny Jurgensen that was the double for Charlton Heston in the movie Number One.
That's right.
Which was about the New Orleans Saints. He was the quarterback of the Saints, and they used all Billy Kilmer footage when he was with the Saints, which was a fairy tale back at the time because they had the Saints as the Super Bowl champions.
So
they might be.
I wish I could have seen guys like Sonny Jurgensen play.
Yeah,
he was
Ball,
great. I
guys
remember
like that. I just
so
Y.A. Tittle.
But this
exactly.
version of Sonny, this older version is what I remember.
Yeah. Let's move on, talk a little tennis here. A bell ringer for Goolagong, Yvonne Goolagong. She's Australian, part Aborigine, one of the best women tennis players in the world, and at age 23, she is ending the 74 season on a high note, beating Billie Jean King in the semis and Chris Evert in the finals of the Virginia Slims Championship at the LA Sports Arena. It is one of the biggest paydays of the year, so if you're not going to win a major, which she did. She won Wimbledon a few years earlier and really was an unheralded great player of that era.
Well, she won 86 titles, 7 Grand Slams, her first being the French Open in '71 when she was 19. But what's so fascinating, she's won the Aussie Open, the French Open, Wimbledon. She's never won the U.S. Open. She made the finals 4 years in a row and lost all 4 times.
But she also gets lost in the Chris Evert, Billie Jean King, Margaret Court.
Yep.
So, it's like, and then you look at her stats and you look at what she did and you go, this lady was awesome. She was just as good as the other ladies.
Right.
She just sort of got, fell in their shadow.
In 74, Chrissy was the number 1 player. Billie Jean was 2. Goolagong was 3. And then the rest were,
that's right.
Right.
Interchangeable.
She was successful in doubles and mixed doubles, too.
Yes, which back then was a big deal.
Yep. I liked that they said her name. It means tall trees near Stillwater. Goolagong.
Wow.
Yeah, wasn't she also the first mother to win Wimbledon in 66 years? That was in 1980.
Is that right?
Yeah. And in that win, she had to beat 4 top 10 players. Mandlikova, Wendy Turnbull, Tracy Austin, and Chris Everett.
Wow.
Tracy Austin would be another one. Was she 13 or whatever when she started playing? Yeah. I liked her a lot because that was right in my era.
Oh, sure. She wins 2 U.S. Opens,
Yep.
too. Cut and Run versus the Big Gun. This is our cover story. Another preview article on the Ali Foreman fight, which is now just 2 days away. It takes place on October 30th. This issue came out on the 28th. We're still in Zaire. We've been there an extra 6 weeks. One thing I really noticed in these pictures was how Foreman was just a beast. In his older days, he was kind of a roly-poly guy, and you were like, how are you ever going to penetrate and hurt this guy? But back then, man, he was cut.
Yep.
For the first time in 29 days since he was cut sparring, he gets into the ring to spar and test out the cut. Everything passes the test. Couple of interesting guys write previews and predictions on what they think is going to happen in this fight. Archie Moore had one of them, Billy. What did he say?
Oh, he said Big George is just going to beat Ali up. He's just too big and strong for him, and Ali has no shot.
Well, he had some shot.
Yeah, Casey had one. And Mark?
Trainer Angela Dundee predicted that Ali would win by a knockout in round 9 or 10, and boy, was he close. 8th round knockout. He just wore, Foreman out. Foreman punched himself out, with the rope-a-dope. And Ali was able to survive that, and then,
It was something
Foreman
we
was
had never
exhausted.
seen before.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like we saw it with Sugar Ray and Hagler, kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
I wonder when Ali went to bed the night before the fight, he said, I'm going to try this rope-a-dope. I'm just going to hope that while he's wearing himself out, he doesn't land a blow that I just can't recover
Yeah, I
from.
watched that
So
fight
it was
the
a
other night
gamble.
just to get a good. It almost reminded me of the Mr. T. Rocky movie at the end when
yeah.
he's
Right.
just swinging and,
Right.
and he's taking the
It ain't
hits.
so bad.
Yeah, and there's Ali just back against the ropes, and Foreman's hitting him, and they're going, oh, that didn't hit him, or that missed him, that grazed him, oh, that got him right there, and you're thinking, now
He's
you
getting-
know what Ali was doing.
Yeah.
Now you
What a
know at the
strategy.
time, you're like, hit him,
What are
do
you
something.
doing? Right, you're just taking a beating.
Yes.
Yep. All right, so we're a couple days away from this fight finally taking place, and we've got a guest joining us now that knows quite a bit about what happened back then and since then with George Foreman. Georgetta Foreman has made a name for herself in the television world as a producer for many judicial reality TV shows, including Divorce Court. Way back in 1999, she started. How can that be, Georgetta?
Wow.
25 years ago. Woo!
I don't know. I'm a time traveler.
You sure are. You sure are. She's a smart lady. She went to school over in Malibu at Pepperdine University, and while going to school there, she interned at KCBS with Mark and supposedly Bill. Bill, what?
I know she was there, and I know she was behind me, and I remember the stories about her brothers. When I would ask her if she dates, and she'd go, "You have to go through my brothers." I remember those days. So I think, but
Yeah.
I've gotten older, so maybe.
And yet, despite knowing both of them, Georgetta, you still agreed to come on the Past Our Prime show. Is everything okay with you?
Everything's okay. KCBS was a great stepping stone for me. So I'm happy to be here. There was also Dan Noel was there. It was
We just
fun.
talked about him.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Hill.
Of
all
course.
of the guys.
Of course. Jim's still there.
He's
He's
still
the
there.
only one.
Yeah.
My
Yes.
goodness.
Still there.
Talk about
Yeah,
time
still there.
travel.
He's gonna outlast us all.
So thanks for so much coming here. And first off, we're talking about, like we mentioned, the October 28th, 1974 issue where your dad and Muhammad Ali were over there doing their thing in Zaire, Africa. And before we get to that, just real quick, how's Dad doing these days?
Dad's still punching, and you can always count on him to never be sidelined. He's always in the fight. So I'm proud of him. I this summer I went and stayed about 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks at home, just being a daughter, and it was good times. It was so nice to see him sitting there watching his cowboy movies and enjoying. He's always a good laugh away. So I love him. He loves everybody, and he's still doing his thing.
That's good to hear. That really, for a generation of us that grew up with these mythical creatures that we called, boxers, and you called Dad. I'm so happy to hear that he's doing well like that. What's it like, Georgetta, to be the child of not just a celebrity? There are celebrities that are like local celebrities, and then there's national celebrities. he was a worldwide celebrity. Everybody knew and knows George Foreman. What's the good and the not so good of being raised in a situation like that? Which I get is the only thing you know, but what are the positives of that?
To be just to go what you said, like he was considered, you use the right words, like mythical thing, like he's bigger than life. So everywhere I've gone in life, I feel as though, for the most part, people have given me so much grace because of who he is. He's not only, we've watched The Fighter and The Beast, and everyone loves a comeback, and he showed everybody what a comeback is, and he made everyone smile with the burgers and the grill, and he's done so much, charity, giving, and his spirit is just big. So it's been a great experience to basically um, fly on his what is it, coattail?
Mm-hmm.
Or I can say fly on his cape. I've been able to ride his cape with him, and I'm so proud of that guy. Like he makes me just want to be a better person in this world for my children. I want my children to be able to say, mom was this. So my dad is the benefits of that have been nothing but meeting great people, nice people, people who've, found a lot of grace and also had a lot of great things to say about my father. So it's just been a good life. I can't complain.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. It's about as brutal of a profession as there is. It's your father and the men he was in the ring with are our modern day gladiators, if you will. How hard was it for you to watch him fight? Because when he retired the first time, you were just barely out of the womb, But when he came out of retirement, you're a young kid at the time. What was that like for you on those kind of nights, the big fight nights?
For the longest time, I'm not sure we really watched. For a while, it was just reading the newspaper. There he was, people calling him names and so forth. But he was coming back home. We watched him train. Training used to be, if I really go back to days on the ranch, watching him train and so forth, that used to be so much fun because it was a great time of family bonding. Because in between workouts, watching family come over and play dominoes, watching, everyone make great meals. It was really a truly a family business in that way. Us working out with him, having greats like Archie Moore in our backyard. Those were things that was happening in my life. And watching him fight, though, once I started turning on the television, seeing that was very hard. Watching your dad get beat up, and I'm not saying anybody was beating him up,
I know.
but
Yeah, right,
you
right.
saw it. His eyes would get swollen, all of those things. That wasn't easy to watch, but he had a way, if you remember, he had a way of making everyone feel okay with it all. Like at the end of the fight, he'd give a smile or say something funny. So it was a way of relieving and assuring all of us that he was okay.
My memories of him when he first came on the fight scene was he was a man of few words. But then as the years went by and he came back to fight and he was a business person, he was a man of many words. As a daughter, was he like, did he talk a lot at home? Was he that gregarious guy we knew later on in his life?
I've only known the man of many words, from parables to scriptures to jokes, always had just such a great storyteller my whole life. I hear other kids and like, oh, my mom didn't really talk to me or my dad didn't really talk to me. I cannot relate. My dad loved to talk with us. He was in the room.
Georgetta, what did he? I mean, obviously he had some amazing fights. Did he talk to you about guys like Muhammad Ali, and what did he say about him? What was their relationship like through his eyes?
It's funny because me growing up now, I know Muhammad Ali's a few of his daughters, especially a couple of us have gotten really close throughout the years. But so it's been, even when we didn't know each other, there was this family bond in my eyes anyway. Because my father spoke very highly of Muhammad Ali, especially because what I sensed is that he wished he had been nicer sooner.
Mm.
But once they did make those connections in later years, he held tightly to it, and he loved Muhammad Ali. He really did. Had so much true love for him, and it came out of pure. I'm not sure why he loved him so much in the beginning, but there was something about him that he loves him.
I'm just theorizing here, but one of the things that your dad and Muhammad is there's so few people that can relate to what they were going through. It's like presidents or royal family members. There's so few, and so your dad and Muhammad had this connection because they went through this exact same process together that at some point it must have been such a relief to have that other guy that'd be like,
I think that makes sense. It's to your point. It's like if no one else understands exactly, exactly what I had to go through. And I do know that Dad would always say Muhammad Ali, he was such a jokester, It's like he's I think like the seriousness, obviously Muhammad Ali was bigger than life and there was a lot of seriousness to him, but Dad just thought he was just pure fun.
So the Ali fight was the first time he ever lost. Did he ever talk about how that actually helped him as a person or helped him grow as a person, not as a boxer, but as just a person in general?
Well, I feel like, like all of us, when we lose, we try to rationalize it, right?
Hmm.
And however that is. I do think no one wants to lose, and I don't care how you chop that up. No one ever wants to lose. But I do think that he found a way to have peace with it. One, if you're gonna lose to that guy,
Right.
Two, he had a second chance, and he probably, from what I gather, doesn't know if he would have had that second chance had he won that fight because it
Hmm.
just changed the trajectory of things in so many ways for him. So I think he's one of those people, especially now, that's grateful for it all.
Hmm.
Over and over, he would not have wanted to fall in that ring. I don't care what anyone says. That day in Zaire, he would not have wanted to go down, but it happened, and he's learned to embrace it and embrace the moment that he had.
We had a guest on, I think, last month named Frank Alaco, who was a backup quarterback at Notre Dame, and he spoke of his coach Ara Parsegian, who after Notre Dame lost a big game, and he said the quote was something to the effect of adversity has the effect of eliciting talents that which under prosperous conditions may have remained dormant. And so basically what he's saying is losing can bring out things in you you may not have known were there. And that seemed to have the kind of effect that you're talking about with your father.
I have to say that like so much happened in his life after that. I mean, he changed. He has his religious experience that changed the trajectory of his life. That also took him out of the ring once. That happened. It also took him out of the ring for what 10 years.
Right.
So that probably saved him in so many ways.
Hmm.
Sometimes fighters don't know when to stop, but he had an opportunity to literally stop and live life, and then come back into his own.
So after that loss to Jimmy Young in 1977, and he steps away from the ring for 10 years, do you remember when he made that decision that I'm going to go back in 87 and fight again, and like how that decision was made?
I think that decision was made with a bunch of hungry kids sitting around the house, and I think by the time the wife mom comes home and says I'm pregnant again, I mean decisions had to be made. But I do
Time to
remember one of
fight.
the greatest moments, especially because of how it happened. I do remember at the kitchen table, like suddenly we never had family meetings, and there was suddenly this family meeting, and back then we had this. It was like a wooden table with a bench and some chairs on the side, and he set us all around. I think by that time, it may have been five or six of us, I don't know, like the number count. But anyway, so we were sitting around the table, and he tells everyone that he's going to come back to boxing. And I was really on the younger end of that. So I'm looking around like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what's happening. But I do know he comes back through all the talking. I can hear my eldest sister. She really knew what was going on and what that meant. But I could see him walking back in the room with these clothes that were just too tight. And he was trying to show us that he was going to fit back into these clothes and that he was going back into boxing. And it was
I know that
funny.
feeling.
It was more comical. But then, like, some of the serious things that he told us, and I talk about this all the time, is that he's like, I'm never going to not be the dad that you know, because at that point, we only knew a dad that was around the house all buttoned up and going to church a lot, more than most people go in a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we only knew that dad. And he said, I'm not going to change, and I'm always going to be faithful to my wife. And again, as I always say, I'm thinking like, what? Who's not faithful? You know, I didn't even didn't put it together, but he wanted us to know that there used to be a man that he was before we knew, and he wasn't going to be that man anymore. The man that we now know, at that time, I guess it's around what, 86, 80 something. He's like, this man, the same man that you know, that you see in this house, you're going to see us out on TV. And the biggest warning that he gave us was, if one of you get in trouble, we all get in trouble. So at that moment, it was like we were at a pack to be the Foremans, and we were going to be the best Foremans that we could be. And he made us proud. Who knew at that moment that he would become who he became once again?
So he does that comeback,
Yeah.
okay, and he loses to Holyfield, and he loses to Morrison, and but then he has in 1994 the fight against Michael Moore. Do you remember that fight? And when your dad knocks Moore out,
One punch.
Well, yeah,
punch.
Walked right into it.
What was your feeling? What was the emotion?
First of all, I can remember that day. I think my dad didn't know. Anyway, I won't even tell about who was there with me, but I'm watching the television, and, you know, he's fighting, obviously family, everybody's cheering him on. And it's like, it's not looking good at some point. You know, you kind of go, well, he's fighting, but I don't know if he's going to win. And I remember one of my friends was sitting there awkwardly. You know, no one knows what to say, but we all got hope and we're watching. And then it happens. And everyone in the room jumps and we're all screaming, exciting. And I don't know how he did this. It seems so magical. Dad at this point has at least probably, 7 kids, 5 kids, I don't know. But he was able, it just seems like it was so fast. By the time I finished celebrating, he was on the phone with me. He called me, and it wasn't a cell phone, it was a landline.
Right.
He said, did you see it? And I'm like, yeah, we saw it, you know, and we're celebrating. So I don't know how it happened, but it was really one of the most magical moments in my entire life. It was such a beautiful moment.
So would you say during that fight against Moore that there was a part of you at the beginning, at least, that you were a little nervous? Because Moore was hitting him quite hard in there, and it didn't look good. They were even saying that, I remember, on the telecast that I watched.
Yeah, you're always hopeful that your guy, your team, whomever, that they're going to pull it out and they're going to win. But it, you know, we'd gone through who was that? We'd gone through Holyfield fight before, where, you know, it kind of like he held in there and it was a good fight, but he didn't take the W, you know? So watching this fight, it's like, okay. And then when it happens, it was just something that, as you all know, that no one can believe happened in the way it happened.
You know, for the longest time, you mentioned earlier, George was just this intimidating figure. If he wasn't pissed off, he certainly seemed pissed off. But the transformation really took place once he found God and his faith. How much did that change him? And could you see a transformation as a young child?
I only knew that guy. That's the only guy I've ever known. The other guy that, you know, we see pictures of with the, listen, he's still a human being. You know what I mean? Like, Dad is still, you don't want to cross him. Let's be clear. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he's still a big, strong guy. his heart had changed, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So I've never seen or know of the old guy with the hat to the side. I just don't know him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've only known the latter George Foreman.
I think that worked out well.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I'm happy for me.
Yes, I'm happy for you as well.
Now, did you have for barbecues? Did you have all the George Foreman grills there and working? Like there was never a shortage of that.
No, we had a good grill in life, and Dad can cook. He really can cook when he wants to, and it makes everyone around him want to cook. And he loves food, and we grew up with too much food. Lots of love.
It's funny because I remember a quote that said something about, I forget, I think he was training to fight Norton earlier this year. And the quote was, I want to get so rich that I can just eat all the time, because he was always having to train, and so he just wanted to knock guys out, get paid so that he could eat. He just always had this love for food, did he not?
Yeah, I mean, and from all the stories I hear, it comes from, growing up with having less, not having enough,
right.
And then so later on, he got that taste for more and more, and he enjoyed it. I can remember when I was very young, before he got back in the ring, I can remember him eating like a dozen of eggs. I mean, he was doing too much. I think boxing probably saved him in a lot of ways. His comeback probably saved a lot of let's see, indigestion. How about that?
Sure. I saw a quote from him that said when he grew up, they weren't poor, they were po, because they couldn't afford the OR at the end of the word. I mean, so I think you're right. I mean, he was making up for lost time there, wasn't he?
He was. And one thing about him, it wasn't just, and then in our family, it became like food was a celebration, was a way to celebrate.
Well, Georgette, I'm going to take a left here because there was a show that I really loved a few years ago. It starred your father. It had William Shatner in it, Henry Winkler. And they would travel, and Terry Bradshaw. They'd travel around the world and try different foods and do different things. Did you see that show? And tell me about your dad. How much did he enjoy that? Because he was fun in there.
You know what? I was so happy for him because this was the first time. You worry about them. When you're from TV, you're like, what's this? What is this going to be? But he was able to, for lack of words, let his hair down and travel with friends like, Terry Bradshaw or people that probably he wouldn't, be hanging out with in his daily life. So what a fun show. What a fun way of celebrating, the golden years. And yeah, it was a good time. I think he enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was better late than never. That's it.
It
was it was one of those ones where every week I thought, I got to watch this. They were great. And he was the only one that sort of kept it together. The other guys were nuts and I'm not doing that. He was great.
Did you guys ever see The Masked Singer? The Masked Singer?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Was he on that?
Yes.
He was on there. And that's one show I'm disappointed about because, boy, does he love music. He can sing. People don't know that. And he loves music in a way that I can't explain, like all types of music. That's one show that I wish he had an opportunity to stay on longer.
Yeah, that was really funny, though.
Now, you said your dad loves to watch cowboy movies. Were you saying that?
Are you kidding me?
Mark's a Western guy. Mark is a Western guy.
Buff. Yes, so, what's his favorite Westerner? Do you know?
I'm not really sure what everybody loves the John Wayne, but he watches everything. What is oh my gosh, all the episodes are not in my head. I even watched the new one, this Wells Fargo.
Oh, do
you know that one?
Tales of Wells Fargo with Dale
Oh my gosh, yes. I fell in love with that one the 3 weeks that I was at home with him. So he loves horses. If you know him, he's just a cowboy at heart, and he has tons of horses and he loves them.
I don't think I can recall a transformation like we saw with George. He went from that perpetual scowl to a perpetual smile. Mm-hmm. That was what we saw, but it's obvious that he passed on that smile to you.
Yeah.
What about your siblings? Are most of them as outgoing as you and your father?
We are all in some ways just little chips of Dad. Every last one of us. He sprinkled George Foreman in each and every one of us. My brother George Foreman III, he has a gym out here in Calabasas, California. And so he's really into fitness and so forth. My sister, she's one of my sisters, she's a PhD. So
Wow.
she's a college professor. So, they're into kids and so forth. And it's a big group, a fun group, a group of giggles. That's what I'd like to
I
say.
was
So
I was
we
gonna
got it.
I was gonna say I don't feel like there's gonna be too many. Maybe in church about the only time the Foremans are quiet, and maybe not
Oh,
even
no.
then.
No, it's a big, loud group.
But we also have to say, and Mark and I can attest to this, when a lot of people come in to intern at a TV station, they're not interested maybe doing the grunt work that you have to do. You came in with a name backing, and you were one of the nicest, hardest working people that are there.
Positive attitude?
Exactly, positive attitude. That just shows you the type of mother and father that you had that helped you become that way.
I really thank you for saying that. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Yeah, like we're from the sweep the floor family, so you sweep the floor and you enjoy the big things too. So thank you. I appreciate that.
So we do a segment in here, a trivia segment called 50-50, where I give you a 50% chance to get something right. So I actually have a couple things for you. The first one is true or false. The first movie or TV thing your dad ever did was an episode of The $6 Million Man. True or false?
Hmm. Uh,
Keep in mind, you don't win anything
Yes.
if you
yes.
get
So
it
the
right.
pressure's
There's
not
no
on.
pressure here at all.
I don't remember this, but I'm gonna say true because why not?
You're right. It is true.
Okay, got it.
He played a character named Marcus Grayson in the episode. I'm assuming
Now I gotta
Marcus.
Google it.
Yeah, I'm assuming he was a boxing episode. On the $6 Million Man, he wasn't George Foreman. He was this Marcus Grayson.
Nice.
It was a knockout episode.
Yeah, ha ha ha. But but the other question I have for you, so the movie came out last year, Big George Foreman. What were your thoughts on that? I'm just curious. Was it accurate? Was it a lot of license?
A movie is always a movie. Let's
Right.
be clear, but
Right.
it definitely got the tone and sentiment of what it was. I can tell you the first time I did a screening, or did I watch the first time I screened it or whatever, I think I went to a screening. It was kind of hard because I was sitting there thinking, that's not dad, that's not this. And then finally, when I watched it the next time, I finally had to get out of my head, like, nobody is him. There's these characters, there's someone playing him. And when I tell you I enjoyed that movie so much because I was able to take myself outside of it and just enjoy the movie. And I think they did a good job. I think they did a really good job.
So true or false is the second trivia question. So in the movie, they decided, as opposed to using makeup or a suit, they decided to take a 6-week break from shooting and have the actor gain weight to play your dad in later years. So true or false, the actor actually gained over 50 pounds during that time off.
It's true.
Yeah, you're right. He gained 50 pounds, get this, in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That alone makes him a great actor.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Just doing that. He
Damn.
committed to the role.
Yeah.
Good job. He did a great job. And people loved it. People got it.
Hey.
They really enjoyed it.
Hey, Georgetta, I did it and didn't get the part.
No.
I'm with you. Same thing
What's
happened to me,
going on
too.
there? I was so into that.
Yes.
My gosh.
Right.
Well, it was very Robert De Niro of him, very Raging Bull.
Yes,
So,
yes. I have a true-false question for you, Georgetta.
Okay.
Dan Noel was the best producer you ever worked with at KCBS.
No, it's a
True or false?
multiple choice question.
They were all great, great producers. I thank Dan Noel because he's the reason why I got there. So I will always be grateful to Dan Noel.
You know, Georgetta, the success he had from the George Foreman grills. Who could have seen, that would become, I think I read where your dad's financial impact, he made more selling the grill than he did his boxing career. It's just unbelievable. What kind of impact did that financial success have on him and his family? Because it must be such a joy to be able to, provide for generations of Foremans because of that.
Well, I will say life growing, especially in the good times, there was a booming grill time, and I lived through it. And let me tell you, those were enjoyable times. Being able to not just help us, but so many, Dad elevated everyone he came in contact to because of, the grill gave him the opportunity to. So it wasn't just like a Foreman household thing. Dad takes care of a lot of people, especially at that time, a lot of communities,
Right.
schools, scholarships. It was that grill was a gift to us all. So many beyond the Foremans.
I bought the grill because of him.
Right.
Yep.
When it came out, I loved it so much. It was so fun. I thought, I got to have me one of those. And I ended up getting 3 of them.
Yep.
So I had it for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
But I'll tell you a personal story. So my father-in-law is a huge fan of your dad's. And so before you started interning, I worked with Jim Lampley, and Lamps was doing the boxing commentator with your dad. And so I said to him, is there any chance you get an autograph? Because my father just loves George Foreman. And he went, and your dad signed the autograph. And to this day, my father-in-law still has it, still cherishes it.
That is so amazing. So amazing. But yep.
Yep. I read this quote from your dad about money. And he said, money is a good thing, but every morning you have to get up with something no one else in the world gets up with. And that's that image. That face you see in the mirror, you gotta love it, and you better do some things that you feel good about inside of you. Of course, money is going to come, but make certain that you do some good with it. He did that, and I can't tell you what a joy he was for so many of us for years, and for you to come on today and share that with us. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Georgetta. Thank you so much for taking out some time of your day today.
Yes,
I just want to end with saying that I am very aware that you would rather have George Foreman on this show, and I get it because he is so amazing, and I really wish I could have had him be here today, but I am so thankful you allowed me to come and to speak on behalf of him and the Foreman family, and I really appreciate that. And anything I can do for you guys, just let me know.
I say oftentimes about Mark and Bill that when we do projects together, that they represent me better than I represent me. And you certainly represented the hell out of your dad today. You did a great job.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you're
You
the
were not a
best.
backup by any means.
Not at
Thank
all.
you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
so
great
much.
day. Thank you again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Just as awesome as she was 20-some
Yeah.
years
Right,
ago, man.
right.
Damn.
And sounds like,
The same.
like a young 22-year-old,
Yeah.
show me how to do this,
Yep.
Also, the DNA from George, it almost makes you wonder if George was bottling up and because he had to fight. A lot of fighters are like this. They have to not like the guy they're fighting. It gives them that little bit of an edge.
A lot of athletes do that.
Athletes, absolutely. So maybe he just played that part so much, especially as a younger guy. And then once he got past that, he was like, "Oh, I don't have to be like this anymore," because the DNA in her. She got none of that old George. That's for sure.
No, like we said about a lot of people. When we were growing up, George Foreman, he was a guy that was like, you didn't mess with. He wasn't friendly, didn't smile. That's why you always gravitated to guys like Ali. And then you see him later in life and you go, that's the real guy.
Yeah.
That's been the real guy.
All right, let's move on. From boxing's 2 biggest names to the NBA's 2 biggest, literally off on the wrong foot before the NBA season begins, both Kareem and Dave Cowens have suffered injuries. They both are going to miss some time. Kareem took a finger to the eye from Don Nelson and in frustration punched the post supporting the basket, broke his hand. He's going to be out 4 weeks or so, they say.
Tell him, Scott, when did he do that?
Yeah.
I mean,
exhibition season.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right?
players never get riled up for that.
Yeah.
And that really messed up the Bucks because they started the year 1-13 because
That's right.
and they had a
didn't have
losing
good
record
season.
that year.
You think it was a one-man? Oscar Robertson had also retired,
Yeah.
and Lucius Allen
Yes.
Right.
had
That's
a
right.
knee injury.
That's right.
So they go from Game 7 of the NBA Finals to 1-13.
Yep. And
And
no
like I
playoffs.
said, I think they finished 40-42. And then you have Dave Cowens, who he went up for a rebound, and as I said, came down on crutches. And they too started slow and didn't necessarily fully recover the defending NBA champions.
I think the interesting thing, though, with going back to Kareem for a sec, he got poked in the eye, but when he came back in November, he was wearing goggles. That was the impetus for him to wear goggles.
He had an eye surgery when he played at UCLA.
Wow.
He had this issue back then.
Yeah.
And so something.
That is funny. That was the impetus for him, because the only Kareem I know was
had
the
goggles.
Kareem with goggles.
And then we also know Kareem broke his hand there, but he also broke it in '77 in the first game
That's right.
against the Bucks,
Is that right?
hitting Kent Benson.
Oh, right.
When he
That's
slugged him in
right.
the head because Benson
Face.
elbowed him in the stomach.
Oh, boy, did he drill him.
And Kareem drilled him. And so, he, and he,
I didn't know that was game one.
I think it was the first game. Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause he was out for a bunch of weeks. That was when I followed the
Jerry
Lakers.
West, Dave DeBuscher, Oscar Robertson, Willis Reed, and Jerry Lucas, as well as Wilt Chamberlain, have all retired. That's a lot of greatness in one sentence. ABA and NBA were supposed to merge. That didn't happen. ABA was in better shape with new franchises in St. Louis, Virginia, Utah, and Memphis, but what they really need are a few more Dr. J's.
Right. Or a TV contract.
Well, I want to ask you guys. I'll move past it. I don't mean to, but because you're going when you said about the guys that retired.
Yeah.
With Bill Walton coming into the league, just your guys' thoughts. Did Bill Walton save the Portland franchise? Because their season ticket sales were down.
Mm-hmm.
They went up when he got there. And since then, they've obviously they're a known market.
Right.
But at the time, Portland wasn't. You weren't thinking, "Oh my God, Portland needs an NBA team." So could you say Bill Walton saved that franchise?
Well, I mean, certainly, the name recognition and then a title.
Yes.
winning a title
will
did.
do that, right?
Yeah.
And it just kind of like cemented that they could support a team. I mean, they haven't been good in a long time now.
That's true.
Right?
That's since when they got knocked out by the Lakers 20 years. Wasn't that they're one of their last?
Yeah.
Yeah, when they blew the lead.
Well, I think back then, too, you had the Seattle franchise, the
Yeah.
Sonics. And I think they wanted a little bit of a natural rivalry
Right.
with Portland, Seattle, and
Yeah.
Northwest.
Who would think that Seattle would lose the team
And
and Portland would keep the
still
team?
be
But
there.
I was just reading, it said that their season ticket sales were at 3,000, and then Walton got there, they went up to nearly 7,000. So I
Right.
thought that's saving a franchise in
Yeah.
a lot of
Right.
ways.
And
I just-
then,
Probably.
and then they build a new arena
Yeah,
because
the Rose
of that,
Garden.
And,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and from there, it's kind of cemented.
Yes, yes.
But really, a lot of these franchises back in the day were like on not steady footing
No.
whatsoever. And if you have 4 or 5 really bad seasons, the attendance sucks.
Yep.
Especially
Well,
now
I
because
mean-
you're seeing salaries start to go up around this time, and
yep.
they couldn't support a team.
Well, look, I mean, you have the Seattle Sonics made the playoff that year. They're now the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yep.
You had the Kansas City Omaha Kings.
I liked them,
They're
too.
now the Sacramento
That's
Kings,
right.
John Havlicek and the Celtics are the defending champs. They're looking to hang another banner in the Raptors. If they do, it will be on the legs of Hondo. He is in perpetual motion, as evidenced by this story from when he was a rookie, when scrimmaging against Jim Loskatoff, a chiseled vet known as the Enforcer. Havlicek was getting tossed around, so the smart rookie started running and running and running and running, wearing Loskatoff out by constantly moving around. The veteran said to the rook, "Nobody runs like that. Slow down." And Havlicek said, "Quit pushing me around, and I'll quit running so hard." And his work ethic was legendary. Bob Ryan made that clear to us
Yeah.
when he was on our show about his work ethic. He was known as a tweener, they thought. They thought he was too small to guard forwards and too slow to guard guards. And as it turned out, he could do both. And it reminded me of Draymond Green. When Draymond Green came out of college, they were like,
Yeah.
he's not big enough really to guard a center, and he's not strong enough to do the forwards. They didn't think he could guard anyone, and what they really should have been looking at is, oh, wow, he can guard everyone.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this article shows you John Havlicek could do anything. They said he played tennis. He could do theater. He's a great fisherman. It was amazing in everything he did.
He was drafted
That's
by
right.
by the Cleveland Browns
That's right.
and went
That's
to training
right.
camp with them when they didn't like the offer the Celtics gave
That's
him as
right.
a rookie. I mean,
That's right.
And they said, was the last receiver cut,
That's
so
right.
You're right.
And then Bobby Knight had said, who was a good friend of his, said John Havlicek is the greatest basketball player who ever lived, bar none. I'm not saying he has more ability. I'm saying he's the greatest player because he can beat you so many ways, and nobody goes as hard for as long as he does. And that was the truth. I mean, you read
a
those
smart
articles and you just John Havlicek was everything, and I heard he was a super guy too.
Yeah, right.
So in every way, he was a good man.
I think also
player.
like the parquet floor and those uniforms made all the players look slower on the Celtics than they were.
Yeah, you're
As
right,
a-
Mark. That's true.
Bill Russell says he's the best all-around player I ever saw. Another veteran basketball player said he would not rate in the top 5, but if you were playing for $1 million, he'd be in the top 2. So he
Right.
was great when it mattered as well. Went to Ohio State, was going to play football there. The basketball coach went to Woody Hayes and said, "Hey, I need this guy." And the mom didn't really want him playing football, Havlicek's mom, so went there, played basketball, and the rest is history. Red Auerbach said of him, "John Havlicek is what I always thought a Celtic should be."
Wow.
And you
pretty
hear about
much
what Woody
sums it
Hayes
up.
said about him. Woody Hayes would introduce Havlicek to his football recruits as the best quarterback in the Big Ten who isn't playing.
Wow.
Oh,
And your
wow.
compliments are just some of the greatest, coaches or owners or
Players.
people in the players
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Super athlete, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
I also like next time anybody goes and watches the Sacramento Kings play the LA Clippers, remember 50 years ago that game would be the Kansas City Omaha Kings taking on the Buffalo
Braves, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Braves had some good teams in the 70s.
Yes, they sure did, because Bob McAdoo and De Gregorio, and they had some good players there.
So in this issue, it's SI's NBA and ABA preview. The one thing I thought, these guys are the experts, right? But they're just guessing, like all of us are all the time.
Right.
And you can't take into consideration injuries and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. But in the Pacific, they like the Lakers, who I think finished last.
Yeah, I think
Right.
they did too.
And they didn't like the Warriors,
Who won
and
it
the
all?
Warriors win
title.
it all.
Yeah.
So just shows you that they didn't know.
What they
Just
were
don't
talking
know.
about.
It would
You
be
don't know.
so
It's-
cool
I'm not
one
making
day.
fun of them, but
It'd be so cool one day to get one of the players from that team.
the hope is, Billy, that Rick Barry will be joining us before the year
really?
ends. But
Who knew?
right? Wouldn't that be something?
I'm going to challenge him to an underhand free throw contest.
You're gonna lose.
Yeah, you're going to, exactly. We could all three do it, and we'll all three lose.
Yeah. A good look at the series. Now, Vince Scully joined the NBC booth for the games played in L.A. between the A's and the Dodgers, while A's announcer Monty Moore was with Kurt Gowdy and Tony Kubek for the games in Oakland. Big advantage for Scully is that O'Malley basically knew what he had in Scully and was like, have at it. I'm not going to censor anything. Whereas Monty Moore was under the thumb of Charlie Finley, and Finley didn't want him going out there and talking about Raleigh Fingers and Blue Moon Odom
Yeah.
fighting and Billy North and Reggie Jackson fighting. So he was an insider with inside info, and he wouldn't share it. So on a national broadcast, Moore seemed to be hesitant to bring up any of these A's off-field issues, and there are plenty of them.
It actually made him look bad in this article because they said he was a major disappointment,
Yes.
while Scully was the
Rose to fame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because
Yeah.
he had plays where he called a guy getting picked off first and
Right,
catching
that's
the
right.
ball wherever
Yes,
they.
he said that the pinch runner Herb Washington
Yeah.
was perfect for Mike Marshall, who had a great pickoff
And
move
he
to be picked
got him.
off, and he picks him off.
Yes. And so, unfortunately for Monty Moore, he leaves with that. I could have been just as noted as Scully, but he wouldn't say anything or couldn't say anything because he probably would have been fired.
Right.
And everyone thinks of Vin, as this guy that announces, legendary baseball announcer. But, he did this thing for NBC, and then CBS hired him, and he did golf, he did football.
Yeah.
He was on the telecast when
catch.
Dwight Clark made the catch. He
Yep.
was calling that game. So, Scully had
That's
some
right,
great
that's right.
moments.
Rolling.
Yeah,
That's what he
correct.
says
Yeah.
about Montana.
Yeah.
And I remember he was doing some golf tournament. He was talking about like the shape of the greens and stuff, and the fairway, and they were very bumpy. And he said they were like elephant burial grounds, which was like really interesting
Yeah.
because there were big mounds and stuff like that. He was so descriptive. I think he read a lot, and so he used all that knowledge
Oh,
in describing
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
And when he filled in for Bob Miller was just amazing.
Did he do hockey?
No.
Oh. I was like, wow.
Because he could. I bet you he could.
Oh, I'm sure.
I
he
bet
could.
you he would have been absolutely
Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
he's from New
at it.
York.
Yeah, no
You know.
question. He would do it.
I said my biggest thrill was when Vince Scully said to me in the box up at Dodger Stadium, "Hi, Mark," because we just done this thing with Bud Selig, and it was just to have him call you by your first name. It was
Yeah.
like, wow.
He came in. I
Just
remember
like
he,
Jim Hill. Hey, you.
Vin Scully came in the
Hey,
booth
buddy.
one day in spring training, and I'm sitting in one of the booths between getting interviews with the White Sox, and someone knocks at the door. I open it, and he goes, "Hi, do you mind if I come in and sit with you?" It's Vin Scully, and I'm like, sure. So for a half hour, we talked about the Dodgers and the White Sox, and then I had to go back and get interviews after the practice, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't say it. I said, "Nice meeting you." And I didn't, I mean, it was just, I was so intimidated because we had a long, like a half-hour conversation about the teams and what did I think about the White Sox this year. And he likes this guy. And I just thought, damn,
Yeah, you're in the presence of greatness.
Yes.
College football, Wake Forest lost to Maryland 47-0. In their last 18 quarters, they've been outscored 210-0. That's 4.5 games with an average score of 47-0. As the Japanese say, tako no tomogui, destroying oneself as the octopus eats its own tentacles when it becomes hungry. The obvious thing wrong with college athletics is that the policies are made by the people, not in the trenches. Let's use the Greek. The word is thanatos. It's an instinctive desire for death. Now that's Coach Mills. I'm not quite sure he's the motivator that he thinks he is, talking Greek and Japanese to his players. Might be why they're getting their butts handed to them each week.
Now, can you name a famous Temple football player?
Joe Klecko.
That was Wake Forest.
What? Klecko?
No, we were talking about. You're segueing now to the Temple.
Oh, I thought you were talking about again. I'm getting senile.
That was Wake Forest.
So can I bring up something real quick?
Yes.
Muhammad Ali's wife. She likes George Bush.
Have you seen The Gambler?
I'm having a senior moment. Leave me alone. I'm actually having several senior moments.
But I would say the Thanos you talked about because they used Thanos in the Avengers.
Right, exactly.
He's the bad guy.
Correct.
Interesting.
All right.
Hey, Mark, now we can go to Temple.
Let's talk Temple football.
There we go.
Did Joe Klecko go to Temple?
He did. He was on this team back in.
But you said, Mark, that there is another one.
Famous Temple.
Okay.
Because the
better
college
have gone
football
there.
issue, the title is "When Playing Temple, Pray." Okay, so it was a whole thing on the Owls football program, and Temple's in Philadelphia. It's had a lot of great basketball programs.
Great coach too.
Yeah, Cheney. And just, but can you name a famous football player from Temple? And I'll give you a hint. He played around the same time as Jim Brown.
John Mackey.
He's better known for non-sports, for the entertainment business, non-sports things, and now he's actually
Bill Cosby.
There you go, Bill
really?
Cosby.
Yeah. I thought you meant a football player.
Yeah.
Well, he did. He played football at Temple.
Yeah. Well,
He was a football
I thought you
player
meant
at
like
Temple.
a All-American.
Yeah.
Well, when Cosby first started out, they're going, "What's this football player doing comedy?" Football players don't do comedy. And then he had the groundbreaking role in I Spy.
Right.
But yeah, he was.
You knew, Mark.
Yeah.
You know that.
I mean, I
Should've.
know. Yeah.
Good call. Now back to Wake Forest.
Didn't end well for Mr. Cosby.
I don't even know what he's doing nowadays.
Golly, that one threw us all for.
Yes, another one of those.
Well,
the OJ high on the pedestal, and then you're,
Bill
I was like
Cosby
Fat
was,
Albert.
Oh,
As a kid, I grew up with Fat Albert,
That was
so
great.
I would like that show.
Yeah. How about this one, Billy? Bruce Hardy helped lead Arizona State past Utah 32-0.
Our guest.
Up 20-0, Hardy made his varsity debut earlier in the day in a freshman game in Albuquerque. Hardy had completed 14 of 25 for 198 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then that night, he came back and played in the senior game. The thing I found interesting here is that they had in parentheses that he was in an April 29th, 1973 issue of Sports Illustrated. That's wrong.
That is. They were in 74.
74.
Because we tried to get him 1,000 times.
I'm like, I'm correcting Sports Illustrated
Get
from 50 years ago, right?
Get it right, suckers.
Yeah. So,
I demand a retraction.
Still waiting for Bruce Hardy to get back to Bill.
We're waiting.
Happen
It's going to happen
now,
any day, man.
Right?
Any day. Probably right now.
NHL season is underway. I love this one story, Billy, between two of NHL's all-time greats.
Oh, yeah. Bobby Orr and Stan Mikita. They got into it 3 times. 3 times on the ice. The third time, Mikita slashed Orr in the legs, so Orr slapped the puck off Mikita's legs. he got away with it because, as one of the Blackhawks said, he's Bobby Orr. Damn right. And even Star's
Back
got away
then.
with things in those days then, man.
For sure.
Stan Mikita always took a backseat to Bobby Hull.
Yeah, he did.
He was always,
That's right.
Hull was the big guy with the Blackhawks. But Stan Mikita
Martin,
did get the
that's it.
fame from Wayne's World because, remember, they would go to Stan Mikita's donut shop.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Stan Mikita was a great player.
Yeah.
And those are the years, I mean, NHL was still, I don't want to say infancy, but man, I
Not a
never
lot of
really got to
teams.
see Bobby Orr play, man.
Yeah.
I've heard,
Yeah.
how amazing he was on the ice, and he retired so early. But I missed that. I
You
saw
pointed
Mikita
this
play.
out to me one time, Billy, and you go back and you look at Bobby Orr's stats.
They're just,
and
Yeah.
then he's a defenseman.
yes, and a good defenseman.
Yeah.
He wasn't an offensive defenseman. He was a defenseman. I mean,
Right.
Paul Coffey had that same thing, but Paul Coffey became a better defenseman later in his career.
Right. A coming of age. This is from an excerpt from a book called Super Red on Secretariat. Whenever there's excerpts from books, it's very difficult to then just summarize what they're putting. But I really enjoyed this article. It's about Secretariat has retired just a few races after winning its famous Triple Crown in 1973. But this is going back to the beginning of the legendary horse's career.
Before he was even born.
His nickname was Red, but how did they come up with his actual name, Billy?
Well, first I want to say this is with the Jockey Club. Their rules are stringent. For example, a name cannot be that of a famous horse, the trademark of a product, the name of an illustrious or infamous person, alive or dead, and it cannot contain more than 18 characters, including punctuation. So they would bring the people that own the horse or a part of the horse would come up with different names. So some of the choices were Scepter, Royal Line, Something Special, Game of Chance, and Dio Valente, Latin for God willing. They couldn't use that name because there had been a horse years ago that the Jockey Club said no, but they're like, oh, that'd be so great, but they couldn't use that. So there was a Miss Elizabeth Ham. She thought of Secretariat, and that's what they named the horse.
Wow.
It was one young woman. Yeah.
How do you get to Secretariat?
I think the article talked about I want to say it was a movie. I'd have to go back. Mark, look in that
Not a
article.
secretary.
It was something about that. It wasn't
Wow.
something that was too deeply
Well,
ingrained.
the nickname was Red.
Yeah.
That we know.
Yeah.
And Lucien Lauren was training a brilliant
That's it.
horse named Riva Ridge.
That's right.
He finally had a 2-year-old colt that had a shot to be really special, but then he saw Secretariat, not running, just being led by exercise rider Jimmy Giffney in the paddock. And Gaffney said confidently, "Don't forget the name Secretariat. He can run." And then he
There you go.
whispered, "Don't quote me, but this horse will make them all forget Riva Ridge." So there was just something about this horse.
And then you
that
read
you
that
could
article,
tell.
and by the end that he was just pulling away from other horses.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah, so they talk about the first time he runs in his maiden race, and I think he broke really badly and
Yeah.
got bumped. And you
Yep,
forget these
yep.
horses this is new to them.
Yeah.
And he finishes fourth, but he gained like 6 lengths down the stretch.
Yep. And the
finished
trainer
fourth.
didn't realize that because he got on the jockey.
Right.
He got into his face and said, "What are you doing?"
Right.
And then he saw like the tape or something, and he goes, "Oh, sorry
My
about
bad.
that."
Yeah. And that he had a habit of doing that to that poor
Yes,
kid, it sounded
yeah.
like. The jockey's name was Paul Feliciano,
That's
a
it.
young kid who took hell consistently
Yeah.
from Lucien. So after the 4th place finish, he was surprised to see he was back on the Secretariat, back in the stirrups for the 15th. In fact, after the 4th, I think Lucien fired him.
Yeah, he did.
And he came to get his check the next day, and Lucien pretended like he had never fired him, just
Yeah.
back in. So he rode him again on the 15th. Secretariat goes off as the favorite. Feliciano vowed not to let him get bumped out of the start like he did the first time, but once again, another rough start. Feliciano was worried he would feel the wrath of Lucien again, but then it happened. Secretariat found his stride. On the outside, almost 7 lengths behind, but by the time the field was midway around the turn, Secretariat had bounded past Irish Flavor and was moving 6 horses wide, choo-chooing toward home. He was a running horse with nothing in front of him now but running room, moving on his left lead as he swung around horses. Paul was like a fighter swarming in. "I knew I was a winner. I knew it then," he said. Think of this. He was 7 lengths down. He won by 6 lengths.
Oh.
By the way, so here's the meaning of the name Secretariat.
Okay,
You're waiting
thank
for it.
you.
It is the officials or office entrusted with administrative duties,
That's it.
maintaining records, and overseeing or performing secretarial duties.
That's it.
Especially for an international organization. Still a weird name for a horse that's
Yeah.
fast.
That first race where Secretariat finished 4th, the only time Secretariat ever finished out of the money.
Wow.
Damn. That wasn't Secretariat the only animal on the ESPN's top 100
Yes.
athletes?
Yeah, like number 33
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that.
I mean, that-
Really good article.
Yeah, it was.
Just like I said, there's just too much in there to do everything, but
Right.
but I enjoyed it. For the record, Mark, you got something for us?
Yes, I do. Bill Walton, his first game is in the NBA. So he made his pro debut with Baltimore, regular season game.
Against
18
Baltimore.
Yeah, but I made his debut with Portland.
With
Portland.
Okay.
Did I say Baltimore? Another senior moment because they were actually playing Cleveland.
Oh, okay. So Baltimore had
Nothing
much to do with it.
Baltimore, Cleveland. There's a
Nothing to
city
do with
there.
it.
That's great.
Anyway, he had 18 points and 24 rebounds before fouling out in overtime. The Blazers did win the game 131 to 129. So
for
the
him.
beginning of an era.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Billy, another NBA center.
Yeah, ABA. But
Oh,
this
ABA,
is
that's
ABA.
right,
Moses
that's right.
Malone played 33 minutes. He scored 19 points, pulled down 11 rebounds, and blocked 2 of Julius Erving's shots. And to think, 9 years later, him and Julius Erving combined for an NBA title over the Lakers with the Sixers. Faux.
Faux sweep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Moses Malone is
And to
underrated.
think, what did you say? 19 points, 11 rebounds?
Yeah.
He's supposed to be a freshman in college.
That's right. Exactly. I think he made the right move.
Yeah. I don't have faces in the crowd. You got one, Mark?
Now let's skip it.
All right. Okay. 19th hole. I don't see anything, but
No.
but at the end of the issue, after the 19th hole, kind of an interesting thing. Almost.
Never on Sunday. It was about a group that did not want baseball played on Sunday. They thought the world would go to hell and be run by the devil if they played baseball on a Sunday.
Did
Right.
they work for Chick-fil-A?
It might have. That's maybe why they're closed.
It is
Yeah.
why they're closed.
It is. That's right.
Because either closed on
So,
Sundays.
it was the Sabbath Association of Maryland. They swung into action to stop this from happening. Damn it. There's going to be no baseball on Sundays. They elected a guy named James Armiger. So James Armiger, he's up in the press box. He's watching the game. After the game, he comes down and he arrests the manager. He gets out. I think it's $200-300 bail, but says, I'm still playing on Sunday. So the next time he got there, he didn't go to the press box. He went right onto the field after the first inning and served papers on the manager again, following which he arrested a different Baltimore player after each inning. See,
He liked to have a good time.
damn right. He's gonna. Hey, man, there'll be no devil here. Then DC decided to do the exact same thing. So 12 members of the Law and Order League of whatever interrupted a game between Brooklyn and Rochester trying to serve warrants. Fight breaks out. Everyone's throwing punches. The police get the worst of it. So what they do is they let the game resume, but only on the condition that the players considered themselves under arrest at the expiration of the game. Yeah, that works. And then the climax was reached on May 24th, 1891, during a game between Cincinnati and Philadelphia. The Cincinnati chief of police marched onto the field with 60 officers, arrested the whole team, and carted the players off to the station, where they were fined a total of $5,400.
Wow.
But after World War I, baseball on Sundays, as we used to remember double headers, became
Yeah, they
in
played
play.
twice
So-
on Sunday.
Yes.
So before World War I, they didn't play on Sundays in Major
No,
League Baseball?
it was a law you couldn't. It was a
Wow.
rule. They made it, because the devil take over the world. You do that.
Wow. Because,
What about
you
the
get
NFL?
I know. That's
Yeah.
right. That.
Well, I think the NFL picked Sunday because college football was on Saturday. So and college football was more popular,
Right.
So they had to find, days,
Yeah.
that
Well,
didn't.
we watch baseball now. I just remember Sundays used to be doubleheader day. So.
Right.
But no. And then there's only the one last article I want to talk about. Is that all right?
Go.
There's a movie called The Gambler. that
I've heard of that.
Who
Why does that
are
sound
you
familiar?
people?
James Caan.
Jimmy Caan's in
He
that.
was in that movie.
There's a guy in the end of that, a pimp.
Yes.
The guy who played Honey Bear.
Vargas. Yes.
His son went to Notre Dame.
He did. And USC. It's unbelievable. Mark, you should check that movie out.
That is
Well, I'm
gonna-
ready to start the October 28th issue. Are you ready to do the podcast? Okay.
That's going to wrap up the October 28th issue. I want to thank Georgetta Foreman for coming on with us, giving us some insight into her dad and what it was like to be raised by George Foreman. I can only say this about the job they did raising her. Job well done. Billy, want to wish you and Callie a great time trick-or-treating. Love taking my kids out for
Yeah.
Halloween when they were that age.
Yes.
What are they dress?
I
Was she
sure
dressing
missed
as?
that.
She hasn't decided yet, but she's got like 6 different ones. Whatever her friend says is what she's going to be.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
you know.
Mark, you taking Caitlin out?
Oh yeah, that is... I remember some fond memories, but not anymore.
For Bill and Callie, Mark and Caitlin, I'm Scott. Happy Halloween. We are past our prime.
Who are you guys? Where am
Where's
I?
James Caan?
I want to talk to you about the gambling.
Yeah.